three parts. One is uh, what has happened up till now, what is currently happening both in the markets as well as in the economy, and how do we see the future unfolding. So I think some of the highlights which has really happened up till now was that pandemic has taken the toll not just of the lives of the people, which is so very unfortunate, and more so in a country like India, where the basic means are still found wanting, but it has really taken the toll of the economy. And hopefully, the kind of destruction that has happened in the economy is kind of never before, and hopefully never after. Uh, should such a thing get repeated, I think with vaccine round the corner, a lot of optimism is getting built around that. I would say that let's look at Nifty, which represents the basic benchmark of the how the stock market is behaving. And of course, the cliche, as what we all know, is that uh, indices reflect what's going to happen in the economy much before the actually when it happens. So from a just pre-budget, index was close to around 12,500. Then post-budget, it started coming down without the pandemic being in place. It started crashing. And then the pandemic completely decimated, and there was a waterfall decline in the indices. And from 12,500, it touched a low of almost 7,500 sometime towards the end of March. And now, as we talk to each other, just in the last week, it flirted once again close to 12,000 levels, which is near an all time high. And what really is very surprising is that it has corrected from there, but just around this time, the second quarterly results have started pouring in, and most of the quarterly results that have started pouring in are showing a good recovery on the volume front, that is in the top line. There is an EBITDA margin improvement. There is, which has been helped by operating leverage coming into play, and also because of the cost cutting. And also, the PBT levels are showing a very sound growth at the moment in the second quarter. So, before I proceed further, just to tell you that couple of things that needs to be noted, especially when this quarterly results have coming in, that in the second quarter we are seeing a pent up demand which was there, that has come into play in the second quarters. The festival season, as we all know, Navratri, Ganeshotsav, Navratri, and then Diwali. So a lot of volume gets built up over there, and it is pushed into the channel of the dealers, and that is how the sales also happen. So both the things have played its part, and we are seeing a good recovery in the earnings. Now the question is whether in a linear way can it be extrapolated and say that the third and the fourth quarter also will be good. My own understanding is that it will be very difficult to extrapolate everything and say that third and fourth quarter should pick up and that economy is back on recovery today. That economy is back on recovery trail is without any doubt, but the intensity of recovery is what uh, differs from a lot of us who are in the markets. A lot of the people feel that the intensity will only gain momentum, and then the real recovery will happen next year in FY22. I am of the opinion that the recovery will be very gradual, will be in parts and pieces. It will be covering a few sectors. It will not be generic. It will not cover everything. And at the same time, I still feel that maybe FY21, of course, everybody is talking about a 10% fall in the GDP on an annualized basis for FY21, but recovery should start happening in FY22. But believe me, friends, that personally from FY23 onwards, I think India is going to enter a beautifully bullish momentum, which probably the seeds of that are being sown right now, and in the times to come, we will see a lot of changes happening. And it has just not got to do only with the fact that everybody is now China averse. It is also got to do with the fact that a lot of realization has suddenly come that some of the companies, if they take a suitable initiatives, there is a good market which can be tapped, and there is every chance that India can become a good manufacturing hub, in spite and despite all what we hear about what the current government is doing or not doing, and the lack of efficiency or over efficiency of our FM. But I think FY23 onwards, I think India will enter into a virtuous good cycle, and possibly we will enter a good golden phase. As it is, when an economy is close, where the per capita income is close to $2,000, it's going to be $1,800 this year. And as we all have read, that Bangladesh this year is going to overtake India in terms of per capita GDP. But that doesn't matter, because we all know that Bangladesh is a very small economy, but India is a giant, and a lot of things are going to happen out over here. So when a GDP, per capita GDP reaches around $2,000, you get into a good inflection point, you get into a good virtuous cycle, and hopefully that virtuous cycle starts feeding into each other, and possibly, this cycle may continue from for maybe next 5 to 10 years, and which will catapult India among the top three. But that I see happening from FY23-24 onwards. But just to tell you a little about what has really happened up till now in this particular scenario, we saw that some of the statistics that have emerged are quite staggering and surprised a lot of people. One of the statistics that is there is that the company's when the crash came, there was a waterfall decline in the prices, and everything got decimated beyond recognition. But during the same period we saw, and when the stock started recovering, we saw that Hindustan Lever, HUL, there was a block of almost 25,000 crores, which is roughly around $3 billion. That got oversubscribed in a matter of just 1 hour. We had so many issues coming from HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, not to forget even Airtel did almost $1 billion. Each of this Kotak, HDFC Bank, HDFC, all of them have done issues of almost $1 billion. There were quite a few other companies which did anywhere between $100 to $500 million. But they all got lapped up so very quickly. What does that indicate? It indicates that there is a inbuilt appetite which is there for good companies, and people are ready to lap it up without any hesitation. Second thing, we all know that how Reliance single-handed without any support from any government, without any support from anybody else, single-handed has taken almost $25 billion towards Reliance Jio and towards Reliance Retail. Now, in this 25 billion, which is equal to almost India's FDI, I think this is kind of an unprecedented kind of scenario that single person, that single company riding on the key person, Mr. Mukesh Ambani, has managed to attract this kind of investment into India. And 25, and in this particular investment, you had who's who of the world Fortune 50 companies who have invested into India, whether it was Facebook, whether it was Google, or maybe the top-notch private equity players like KKR or General Atlantic or IDEA, which is Abu Dhabi Authority. They all pumped in anywhere between $1 to $3 billion each of them into either Reliance Jio or Reliance Retail. That shows that the optimism that is shared by even some of the foreigners. Now, look at it from a slightly bigger perspective, that anybody who wants to put in serious money in the world, possibly there will be very few destinations which will be left after this pandemic. And the international investors are really betting that India will be one of the economies, in spite of the fact that they have taken such a big hit, gradually on a longer term basis will show a very good momentum of momentum and sustainable recovery, which possibly can last into years. And who knows, Reliance Jio will get listed maybe in Nasdaq itself. We all know how the FANG stocks in US have really fared, and we have also seen how Reliance from 850 rupees has gone up to almost 2,300. Now it's closer to it's around 2,000 rupees. But what I'm trying to say, this couple of instances show the kind of optimism that not just we Indians, but even the external people who will have a much more objective view about India, in spite of the fact that some of the players who are investing in India have a long history of their presence in India. They know all the hurdles that Indian foreign investors face, and how the depreciating rupee has not given them any great returns. But yet, all of them have shown a tremendous faith in India. I think similarly, something like what has also happened is politically, we have seen that there has been a tension on the border front, and we have seen that we do not know who is to be believed more, whether the Indian government or whether the US government. The US government really, by its talks and by its actions, have really sent one signal that the situation on the border is everything but peaceful. It has a potential to flare up. Now, if Trump in his speech says there is 60,000 troops of China on the Chinese border, and the way they sent their two nominated and sent their two senior people to India just on the eve of the election, underscores the fact that the border tension is likely to be more real than what the press is trying to make out to be, especially the Indian press. Though I've been reading off and on what New York Times says and what Washington Post says, but I've not really tracked what is the general view of the American press or maybe the European media. So I think that factor we should not ignore. And possibly, I think the history is abound with such cases that whenever there is an international turmoil, whether it was pandemic which happened in 1918 or 1920, I think we saw that there was a world war which got played out. Two world wars got played out over there, and world was in a constant state of friction. So in this case, currently also, when the world is in a turmoil and in a state of total flux, so I think that itself makes a fertile ground for any possible confrontation that could happen, maybe on our border or internationally anywhere else. That factor remains. The other part is the kind of stimulus that the US government has provided. And of course, the European Union has also, not to be left behind, has left no stones unturned and has let loose a big stimulus package. Further to that, the European countries too have given a good big stimulus. And I think then you have China, then you have Japan, then you have Russia, and you name quite a few of the economies have unleashed a lot of stimulus. So, what happens when there is such kind of stimulus that is unleashed? A part of this money flows into all class of assets. It's not just the economy. It flows into all class of assets. And when I say all class, I do mean all class. So whether it is gold, silver, whether it is equity, whether it is commodities, we have already started seeing, and we will continue to see, inflation in the prices of all class of assets across all class of assets for some more time to come. So that's why we feel that despite all the pessimism, all the destruction in the economy, and the ground figures of the economy not being good, whether here or internationally, we are seeing that the US markets also have gone up quite a bit. They are also at record levels, particularly the FANG stocks. And what we are also seeing is, even in India, a similar pattern being played out. My broad take on the stimulus is two things. One is, apart from equities, one should also focus on gold and silver. I think commodities also will show a good rise that we can see. But at the same time, there's every possibility that some of the countries possibly will come, some of the countries and some of the big companies in US, in Europe, despite all the stimulus, will come to a level where meeting their debt obligations is going to become very difficult. If you remember, post Lehman, we were hearing Portugal, Greece, Ireland, even Italy was one of the countries which prominently figured as the countries which are likely to reschedule their debt, which is a very nice way of telling that they are going to, which is nice way of telling they are going to default on the debt. So all those things possibly can play out over next couple of months. And as what we all know, that you being in US, I think the hard-fought elections, whichever way it goes, I think it's going to have a good repercussions on the economy and the world market. And the way Mr. Trump has really played out so far, I think he has done all the possible things to take care of US interest, as Mr. Modi keeps on taking care of the Indian interest. So we have all kinds of tariff barriers, and you just name it. The WTO has gone for a toss. And what has happened is, maybe post elections, we will see a lot of sanity coming back into the world trade, and hopefully it will not remain this volatile, that we have the kind of volatility in the policies that we have seen in the last few years, that possibly will be replaced by more stable policies which will give a good visibility to the overall world economy. So that also is one of the factors which is going to impact uh, India and the world also. So I think quite a few of some of these changes are going to come into play. The second, one more thing is, typically, as far as the Indian market goes, I told you that in the Nifty has gone up. In the Indian context, it fell from 12,500, that is around January, to 7,500 in March. Now back to 12,000 in uh, by the end of October. That was just a few days back, maybe sometime by the beginning of the last week of the week which is just ended. But what do we see? That whenever Nifty falls and rises again, and especially in the back of pandemic, there is a lot of changes that happen. Not necessarily the same kind of companies really come back. So one of the statistics which says is that while index has recovered almost to the pre-COVID levels, it is only 21 out of 50 Nifty companies that have gained. The rest all have either been laggards or have declined. Just to give you one small example, in the pharma sector has led the rally and has now become the leader of the rally. And banking sector, which constitutes almost 35% of the weightage in the Nifty, that includes banks, NBFCs, and insurance companies. That has really been a laggard. So just to tell you that Dr. Reddy's gained almost 70% in the pharma space, which is a part of Nifty, and IndusInd Bank, which is a part of Nifty, is down by 61%. So you can see the two ends of the spectrums. It's the pharmaceuticals and IT, which has really been the top performers, and the financial sector, as what I just said, continues to be still lagging behind and yet to make up. For example, I will say that something like even Bajaj Finance, which went up to almost about 4,800, came down to as low as 1,800, and it's now hovering around 3,200 to 3,300. So that also has declined very significantly. But just to tell you that the pharma sector as such has been the leader and possibly will continue to lead the pack maybe for next 2 or 3 years because of this COVID 2019, and secondly also because of the fact that after this virus, the equation in the world has changed, and China somewhere will have to cede the leadership in pharma to a lot of other countries, and India will stand to gain very prominently. What we understand is that in next 2 to 3 years, the annual increase in pharma in terms of the opportunity, the incremental opportunity, the normal growth that pharma have been showing, that will continue. To add to that, there will be at least incrementally about 40 to 50,000 crores of fresh opportunity which will come to the Indian pharma companies, both locally as well as worldwide, especially in Africa and rest of the world away from US, because US has always been dominating the strategy of most of the Indian pharma companies. But now the rest of the world also will come uh, uh, post this pandemic which has happened. So what, with all this, what it looks like is that possibly in the coming few months, maybe next 2 months, 1.5 months to 2 months, as what I said, with so many events out over there, whether it is US elections, whether it is the international border tension which India has with China, then possible default of the big companies, and possibly a few companies potentially becoming vulnerable on this front. I think some of these factors will accentuate the overall apprehension, and not to forget the fact that the FANG stocks and few of the stocks have gone really overboard, and possibly some of these stocks may look for an opportunity for correction. So I feel that over next 1.5 to 2 months, we will see some kind of corrections coming in, time wise correction, and possibly even index wise correction. And this correction should be looked upon as a good opportunity to acquire some of the stocks and play in India. And as what I said, from FY 23-24 onwards, my own personal strong belief is that India will race ahead from the rest of the pack, and also will start moving into a different orbit. But the investments that needs to be made will be now. It will be, one has to make absolutely from this particular level over next couple of 6 months to 1 year. And I would say that there is no need to put all your money at one go. The best is to adopt the SIP policy. So if you want to invest $100, please invest $10 right now. Stagger your investments over next couple of months, each one to decide whether they want to do it in 6 months, 3 months, or 8 months to 12 months. But markets will offer a good opportunity. And I think that in India, in spite and despite whatever we say about our government, we all know that the fiscal condition of India is not all that great. If fiscal stimulus is not given, the general consensus is the recovery may get postponed to FY 24. But if the fiscal stimulus comes in, then it will be at so many different costs. So that if fiscal stimulus comes in, the fiscal deficit goes up, and then the credit rating agencies like a hawk will start downgrading India. So how we balance both? But we should not forget that if $25 billion can be attracted by one company, and that is Reliance, maybe it's in a different league altogether at the moment. But I would say in that one can do a fair amount of extrapolation that maybe one company has got $25 billion, but there will be at least 50 other companies which has a potential to attract another $25 billion into India, into their companies, as the private partnership in collaboration with overseas private equities and overseas companies. I think the intensity of that will gain ground, and that itself possibly will answer the lack of uh, fiscal support that Indian government can provide at this particular level. I think some of those things will start playing out in the next 6 months, 12 months to 15 months. and that itself will accentuate and increase the confidence in the Indian economy and in the Indian markets. So I would say that let's use this opportunity, which possibly could come over next 2 months, and one should not really try to time the market. One should gradually try to go ahead in this particular way, that as what I said, maybe SIP, uh, staggering your investment over a few months, 6 months, 12 months, decide what is particularly suitable for you. But I would strongly recommend all of you all to invest into the Indian markets, because I think in India, one more thing which has really happened is that in the last 4 months, possibly you may have read the reports in India that 2.5 million new demat accounts have been opened in each of the month. So in the last 4 months, what has been added is almost 60% of what it was in the last, till say the beginning of February or March. Almost 60% of that has already come in by way of new investors. And government, and to the credit of government, one must say that they have realized the potential of this addition of 2.5 million new investors who have started trading. And believe me, a lot of brokers are working only from home. So a lot of these new investors possibly are doing online trading without any doubt. And the way the government has recognized this opportunity, and now they have said that all the mutual funds have to compulsorily invest 25% of their funds in the mid cap and the small cap. It is very natural to imagine that this uh, this 10 million new investors who have come in the last 4 months, you cannot expect them only to keep on buying the HDFC banks of the world, the Hindustan Levers of the world, the Nestle's of the world, and just a few companies here and there. They need to broaden the basket as much as possible. And just one more point in that case is, government also has plans of disinvesting a very big, has a very big figure to disinvest. And possibly, if you may be aware, but there's a company called IRCTC, which they disinvested, but they disinvested in a very unique way. Till IRCTC, most of the government disinvestment, 85 to 90% was taken up by either LIC, which is their own, the left hand pocket and the right hand pocket, so transferring the money from left hand to the right hand pocket, and maybe a few genuine FIIs or mutual funds investing. But otherwise, it was largely done with the help of the institutional investor. It was only in case of IRCTC they experimented that this will be completely given only to the retail investors. And the kind of performance that IRCTC has shown after being given only to retail investors, the runaway success of IRCTC has given a lot of confidence, as well as the fact that there's 10 million new investors which have come in. So in order to give them an opportunity, my own belief is that that government in times to come will keep a very big portion for the retail investors, for them to come and invest into India. Invest in some of the government companies, and possibly that also will be followed by quite a few of the companies coming into the IPO market. So I think that itself will provide a good opportunity in terms of providing a solid tailwind, that this new block of investors, and their numbers only seems to be growing every month, that also will provide a good liquidity and tailwind to the markets. Friends, we all know that 9 out of 10 bull markets are driven by liquidity. And this bull run also has not been any exception to that. In spite and despite of all the pessimism and the poor parameters that still continue to come from international economy as well as domestic economy, markets continue to be northwards. So having said that, I think we are in for a very good time in India. We all know that everyone, uh, especially the foreign investors, are always more worried that what is the dollar denominated returns that has really happened. I can just share one interesting statistics. We manage a PMS. Our 7-year CAGR in our two flagship fund is anywhere between 18 to 20%. This is in rupee terms. I'm talking about CAGR. 7 years back was the time, sometime in August 13. That was the time when Raghuram Rajan came in. The dollar, that point of time, was around 68, 69 rupees. Today it's around 74 rupees. So in absolute terms, the dollar has not depreciated so much. So the dollar denominated return for us has been almost in the region of around 15%. If I take a 5-year view, even in 5 years, we are given anywhere between 15 to 17% return. And if one were to adjust for dollar, I think dollar that time was around 66. So even net of the rupee depreciation, our dollar denominated returns is in excess of 11 to 12% for the 5 years, and that's a CAGR which has been given. So I would say that yes, the dollar worry will be there, but I think the opportunity to make money is significantly larger than the fear of the dollar depreciation. And in this market, as we all know, that if you are here to invest over a period of 5 to 7 years and select good stocks, emerging stocks, the kind of stocks where the leadership can change, I think there is a significant amount of money to be made in the Indian markets on a top-down basis, on a bottoms-up approach basis. And I think the times, it will be very, very interesting times ahead as we go forward. And I'm repeating this for the third time, but I think somewhere from February 20, from 23, 24 onwards, I think India will zoom into a kind of a good virtuous cycle, which will last for maybe 10 to 15 years. And I would strongly recommend all of you all to look into the Indian markets, invest carefully, invest cautiously, and very prudently. I think with this, I will now like to say that I'm ready for the questions, if you all have any. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dilip bhai. This is Jigar here.
Yes, Jigar.
Basically,
Dilip bhai.
Yes.
Dilip bhai, I am Jayavardhan Desai.
Yes, Mr.
Hello.
Desai.
Just I want to know that which 3 sector you like most for investment?
So I would say that in the order of preference, I would still say that pharma continues to look the best for me for next 3 to 4 years at least. Second, I would say that IT looks pretty good, pretty interesting. And third, I would say is the financials, which have taken a very bad beating. I think select select financial companies from the financial sector will do exceedingly well. So
Means
these
bank.
three
Means bank.
means banks and a combination of banks and NBFCs both.
Okay.
So I think this three sector looks pretty good in that order. I'm also optimistic on some of the metal, on the commodity space, especially the metal, which I think will continue to do well for next 2 to 3 years. And that's
Gold or
what I like.
silver?
I must say that I did tell you at the beginning, but I do feel that gold and silver should be an integral part of your portfolio. So
Okay,
if you're allotting out say 100 rupees to or $100 to equity, then at least $25 you must keep in gold and silver. Because I think the kind of debasement of the currencies that are taking place because of the stimulus and by printing of notes, I think somewhere there will be a gravitational pull towards the precious metals.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Most welcome.
Dilip, I got a few questions from our clients actually. So I'll just ask you on their behalf. First of all, what do you see? How do you forecast currency going forward? USD INR.
A good question, but not very easy to answer. And as what I said, not just our NRI friends and Indians living overseas, but even that has been the apprehension of a lot of foreign investors too, institutional investors. So I think, yes, there is likely to be decline of rupee. But I think if one were to say that rupee on an average has declined by almost 5 to 7% over a time frame of 10 years, maybe the depreciation, in my opinion, will be much lower in the next 5 to 7 years. So typically this depreciation doesn't happen in a very linear way. When I say that rupee has depreciated by 5 to 7% over last 10 years, it always happens in jerks and in spurts. So possibly in next 5 to 7 years also this may happen. We may not see a linear path for rupee depreciation. But yes, I think instead of 5 to 6%, it will be much lower than that figure. That what I forecast, as what I see for the rupee depreciation to happen.
Won't it hurt the IT sector as a whole?
Good. IT sector will see. Now what is it? I think IT sector, most of the IT companies, if you have noticed, have been reporting their numbers in dollar denominated in constant currency, and that constant currency is always dollars. So they never report their performance based on the translation of dollar to rupee, whether it's Infosys or anybody. They report based on the dollar growth or degrowth. So I think, yes, it will, if rupee doesn't depreciate in that way, India's competitiveness, not just in IT, but overall exports will come under question mark. But as what I see, that what happened with Reliance, with one single company attracting $25 billion, as what I said, maybe 50 other companies can attract $25 billion over the next 12 months to 18 months. That is very much possible. And that flow of money will see that the rupee doesn't depreciate to that extent. It will reduce the competitiveness of IT as well as the exports. But still, I would say that, yes, it's going to impact, but it's not a major worry for us in the IT because of the digital approach or the route taken by most of the companies. We will see a good volume growth coming into play. And most of the companies, small and big, are all now accelerating their digital roadmap. And that itself would mean a good opportunity for the IT industry. And that will more than make up any headwinds that they may face in terms of rupee not depreciating so much.
Okay. Another question, Dilip bhai. Your view on interest rates, Indian interest rates, and if possible, global interest rates, with so much of liquidity, as you said, sloshing around. Where do you see interest rates? And in that context, equities should outperform or not?
So first and foremost, we all know that the P ratio is inversely correlated with the interest rates or with the bond yields. So as the interest rates come down, there is an expansion of P. And which is what we have seen, which is what has happened and will continue to happen. Now, very interestingly, as what you asked this question, I think the US Fed has, for the first time in their history, said that the negative interest rates or near zero rates is not a matter which will be there only for a few years, but it will be there for a long time to come. Now, that is a very important statement coming from Fed. Because a lot of companies, what they do is they do a short-term borrowings and they want to try to maximize whatever they can for the fear that if stimulus is removed, interest rates can inch up. Now here the Fed has come and said that even inflation will not be the guiding post, which was always the guiding post for Fed to decide on the interest rates. Now they say even if the interest rate goes way above 2%, they will still not be so much be panicking and try to raise the interest rates. So I think that itself will give a lot of comfort, and lot of good long-term money will start flowing into emerging markets and more so in India. So this falling interest rates will hasten or will further consolidate the investment into equities internationally and from the foreign investors. As far as India is concerned, I don't know whether the interest rates can fall further from the current levels, but maybe not in the next 6 months because of the CPI going up, consumer price inflation going up, but chances of it going, interest rates may not come down, but the chances of interest rate going up, I feel, is very, very minimal. And that being the case, I think people will start focusing more into equity. And there are so many pension funds and there are so many obligations of the government in terms of the pension, in terms of so many savings, which the kind of debt servicing that they have to do. So I think a part of that money will also start flowing into equity to enhance their returns. So I see that interest rates in India will continue to be benign, may not go up, and that will continue to focus, that will continue to bring equity into a lot of focus, which has already started and will continue for some more time and will consolidate further.
One question regarding this new farm bill, which is passed in Indian Parliament. Do you think it can revolutionize the consumer sector or a farm sector, agri sector or something like that?
What you say is absolutely correct. okay, it has all the potential to bring about a good revolution in trying to remove the middleman and replace it by a direct consumer. So that theoretically should help the farmers the maximum. But somewhere we all know that the infrastructure in India is very poor. So what really happens is a farmer, in spite of now being free enough to sell to anyone, because he does not have enough infrastructure, nor does he have the finance, he will still be forced to sell to a few people. And his worry is that in this effort, he may be forced to sell at the lower price. And that is where I think their demand for minimum support price from the government is becoming very vocal in a very aggressive way, because they feel that if the private people start taking advantage and start fleecing them, and if they don't even get minimum support price, then it will be disastrous for the farmers. It may be very good for the consumers, but for farmers, this is something where they need to be comforted, where they need to be assured that even if they sell to the private, not necessarily to the middlemen, they should be assured of their minimum support price. And I think somewhere, without me getting into any of the politics of this, I think that factor needs to be given a lot of comfort. But yes, any bold announcements, any such revolutionary steps are never so easy, especially in the Indian context. It always faces a lot of hurdles. But the ultimate outcome is, in 5 years to 10 years, we will see that it would have benefited the farmers and it would have benefited the consumers. What happens in the intervening period, whether that 5 years, 10 years become 15 years, how do we take care of the interest of the farmers of the farmers in the next 10 to 15 years is something that needs to be addressed. But otherwise, it's always a step in the right direction, freeing the farmers from the shackles of the middlemen.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dilip. I think we have crossed the time limit. Actually, we are supposed to, but we are supposed to close it at 8:30. But खबर ज ना पड़ी एक कलाक क्या जतो रहो.
But if there are any more questions, I will be happy to take.
I think.
Dilip bhai.
Yes, please.
Just Jayavardhan.
Yes,
આપણે ફોરેન ઇન્વેસ્ટમેન્ટ જો અહીંયા આવે તો ડોલરનો ભાવ નીચે જશે ને હજુ તો પછી
so rupee will appreciate. You are right. Absolutely. That is why I said if $25 billion can come for one company, if 50 other companies bring in $25 billion, then rupee will not depreciate in the manner it has depreciated in the last 10 years on an average. So what you say is completely right, and that is where I am also coming from, that rupee may not depreciate so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Thanks a lot, Dilip bhai, for enlightening us on this weekend, actually, on a long weekend.
Sure. No, I think it's been really very nice of all of y'all to attend to this and listening to me. I really thank Nishant and Darshit and Jigar, all three of them, for providing this opportunity. And I thank you, all my NRI friends, for being a part of this.
Thank you, Dilip bhai. Pleasure was always ours, actually, No,
it's mutual. It's always mutual.
Thanks, Dilip bhai. And good night.
Thank you. Good night and good morning and have a good day.
Thank you. Dilip
Okay.
bhai.
Good night.
Thank you, Dilip bhai. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll sign out. Thank you so much, Dilip bhai. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.